Thank you. Senator Cotton.
Thank you, gentlemen. I want to add my voice to Senator Blumenthal and his concerns about what's happening in Syria. I was in the grocery store at home on Friday, and an old, rough and tough retired Marine came up to me. He was wearing a USMC hat. That's how I knew it, but I'd probably be able to figure it out even if he wasn't wearing the hat. And he introduced himself and said he just wanted to ask me a question. You know, often in settings like that, the question might be about the VA and what they're doing for our vets, but the question was, what are we going to do about Syria? How can anybody stand by and watch what's happening to those little children throughout Syria? I thought it was a very touching moment, but also indicative of how much normal Americans pay attention, not just to the humanitarian crisis there, but to the strategic disaster Syria has been for 7 years. But for now, I want to turn my attention south to another civil war in which Iran is meddling, General Votel in Yemen. When this war started 3 years ago, much of the fighting was confined into the mountainous terrain of Yemen, and now long-range missiles are being fired at King Khalid International Airport outside of Riyadh. That seems like a dangerous escalation in the fighting there, does it not?
I would absolutely agree, Senator.
Where are Houthi rebels getting long-range missiles that can range the airport in Riyadh?
Senator, they're getting them from Iran.
Well, it's not very neighborly of Iran with its neighbor Saudi Arabia. How are they getting those missiles into Yemen?
Senator, I think Iran has I think, a very sophisticated network of doing this. They can certainly move. They can move in by components. They can move by air. They can move by maritime means. They can move by land routes to get their stuff in there and then reassemble it and provide it to the Houthis.
Can those missiles range the United Arab Emirates?
I think, Senator, some of this might be a discussion that's best handled in a classified setting, but certainly we've seen, as you pointed out here, we've seen threats that have gone as far as the international airport outside of Riyadh.
Okay. If you were a Saudi leader or an Emirati leader, you probably wouldn't be very happy about those missiles being able to range your citizens, would you?
I agree. This is a dangerous threat. It's a dangerous threat to them. It's a dangerous threat to us. We have 100,000 U.S. citizens that live and work in Saudi Arabia.
We also have more than a few naval and merchant ships going through the Bab el-Mandeb, don't we?
We absolutely do.
Okay. Could you tell us a little bit more about the nature of the intelligence and military support we are providing to the coalition fighting in Yemen?
Certainly, we are not parties to the civil war, as you know, Senator. Our principal focus in Yemen has been on the counterterrorism front against Al Qaeda and now against ISIS there. But we are authorized to help the Saudis defend their border, and so we have done that. We are doing that through intelligence sharing, through logistics support, and through military advice that we provide to them. We are principally focused on the ballistic missile threat and the maritime threat that plays out in the Bab el-Mandeb and in the Red Sea to the west of Yemen.
Is it fair to characterize that as a primarily defensive operation in nature?
It is principally defensive and it is designed to, again, protect Saudi Arabia.
Okay, thank you. General Waldhauser. There's been some open source reporting about China's construction of the African Union headquarters in 2012. That open source reporting states that China installed microphones in the walls and under desks and has also copied data from servers each night. AU has since installed new servers and swept its headquarters to remove these listening devices. This kind of public disclosure of blatant Chinese espionage, you would think, would cause many nations, but especially those victimized at the AU headquarters, to think twice about accepting such Chinese generosity, if you will. Have you seen any kind of growing reluctance by the AU or by African nations to cooperate with China or support or accept that kind of aid, given this espionage against the AU headquarters?
I really haven't seen any reluctance on the part of the African countries individually to refuse any type of aid. I mean, I think that the Chinese assistance with infrastructure building and the like is something that is welcome there, but then the agreements that they make, the arrangements that they make need to be scrutinized. I would say, however, to that point, with our base in Djibouti and the Chinese base right next door, what you describe is a big concern to us. I mean, we've got to make sure that our operational security is such that we can operate freely there, because it's not just Africom that uses Djibouti. Special Operations Command, European Command, Centcom all use that area, and we need the ability to operate freely there.
I agree. Thank you, gentlemen, both for your service and for your appearance today.
Thank you. Senator Kane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for your testimony. General Votel, I want to start. We had a good session with General Scaparrotti about EUCOM last week, and he mentioned that you and he spent a lot of time together, especially talking about Syria and Turkey. There have been some questions about Syria. I want to really focus on the Kurds in northern Syria. The Kurds have been superb fighting partners of the United States, or maybe I'd put it the reverse. We've been superb fighting partners of theirs in trying to drive ISIS back. They've helped us, and we've helped them significantly. But the U.S.-Kurdish relationship in northern Syria has been a real tough spot with our NATO ally, Turkey. Now that we've, through the great work of your team and our coalition partners, have made some real battlefield success against ISIS in northern Syria, what do you see as sort of next steps forward in the relationship of the U.S. to the Kurds that can hopefully allay some of Turkey's concerns and maintain their ability as a NATO ally to provide us the support we need?
Well, thank you, Senator. As you know, there are ongoing diplomatic discussions with Turkey led by the Department of State. I won't comment on those. They certainly have our support with that to work through that. Our intention with Turkey, and we do again recognize their concerns here, and have certainly kept that in the forefront of our mind. Has been to try to be as transparent and clear with them on the things that we are doing with our partners on the ground, the Syrian Democratic Forces, which is about half and half Arab and Kurd, and so they have proven to be, as you pointed out, very effective against ISIS, and so as we move into especially in the liberated areas and the areas where we are now consolidating our gains, where we are trying to move more into the stability phase here, so we can root out the remainder of ISIS and we can allow people to come into back into their villages and back into their homes. I think we've, again, got to continue to work closely with Turkey and with the coalition, and certainly with our State Department partners here to work through this. It is, as you point out, an extraordinarily complex situation. The demographics of the area are all over the place, frankly, in this, and so we've got, this is going to take a lot of very close work on the ground. But I think the important piece to get in place right now is to make sure that we have good communication and back and forth. We have a mechanism to reduce tensions and certainly to pass information and prevent these situations from escalating into conflict. That will make it extraordinarily difficult to resolve if we are instigating conflict among ourselves.
Let me follow up, focusing on Syria for a minute, and if you'll forgive me, I'm going to read a statement out of the Marine Corps' doctrinal strategy publication to a Army general. What matters ultimately in war is strategic success, attainment of our political aims, and the protection of our national interests. History shows that national leaders, both political and military, who fail to understand this relationship sow the seeds for ultimate failure, even when their armed forces achieve initial battlefield success. Battlefield brilliance seldom rescues a bad strategy. I'm very, very puzzled about the strategy right now in Syria. We have asked the administration to come up even in a classified session and talk to us about strategy, because the battlefield success of the U.S. plus partners against ISIS has been very notable, very, very notable. But we read just in open source newspaper articles, we need to stay in Syria to not let ISIS come back. We need to stay in Syria to check Iran. We did a missile strike against Syrian forces after Syrian forces pushed against Syrian opposition. We came in a couple of days later with a missile strike against them. We're seeing activity, but we're not really yet in Congress kind of read into a strategy. And I don't know that this is really the place for a discussion of that. It might be better to do it in a closed session, but some of us have been asking the administration to read us into the full strategy. Is it just about keeping ISIS from reoccurring? Is it to check Iran's presence in Syria? Is it to actively push against the Syrian military, as we did with the missile strikes last April and then the recent missile strike that occurred last month? We're real puzzled about it. Anything you want to say about that in open?
Senator, I think, our mission, as you know, has been strictly focused on ISIS. And so the coalition has been focused on addressing this common threat that virtually everybody agrees has to be dealt with. And that's what we've been doing with this. And by pursuing the consolidation operations, by stabilizing the areas in which we're operating, what we are hoping to do is create a platform upon which the international community can move forward under a Geneva process and begin to also address the broader underlying issues that are very apparent across Syria, and that really cannot be resolved through fighting, but have to be resolved through talking and through diplomatic means under the United Nations. So our focus on addressing this common threat that everybody agrees is bad is really, I think, one of the preliminary steps that has to take place. It's certainly, I think, continuing to keep them from rising, continuing to allow these areas to become stabilized, get people back in their home, reduce the refugee problem, I think contributes to hopefully creating an environment that the international community can step forward into, with the leadership of the United States and others here to actually pursue a diplomatic solution to these problems through the United Nations.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Perdue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you both for your decades of service. And I'd like to echo earlier comments, General Votel, for a message sent to your troops for the outstanding success we've had over the last year. And it goes without notice here many days, but I want you to know on record, those of us who pay attention we're very, very grateful for that. I have a question, General Waldhauser, before I get into the other question. Recently, 4 U.S. servicemen were killed in Niger, and one of those, Staff Sergeant Dustin Wright, was a constituent of mine. So your investigation is obviously very important to us. When do you expect that investigation to be completed, sir?
So, Senator, thank you very much. As you well know, the investigating officer did an exhaustive assessment, visited all these countries, 150 witnesses and the like. And he gave the investigation to me at the end of January. I reviewed it for about 3 weeks, and I've turned it over to the Chairman Dunford for him to pass it to Secretary Mattis. Secretary Mattis, I believe, now has it and will review it. As soon as he is done with his review, the families will be briefed. That's been our commitment all along, and we want to continue to do that. And then as soon as practical as the family's been briefed, we will come here to the committee and we will brief you, myself, the two-star who investigated it, and a civilian representative from OSD, and we will answer all of your questions at that time.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for that investigation. I'd like for both of you to address the NDS briefly in your AORs. The most recent NDS obviously prioritized, and I quote, great power competition with China and Russia as a primary effort of DoD, and directs a more, and I quote, resource-sustainable approach, end quote, to counterterrorism. General Votel, what does that mean in your AOR? And parallel to that, we're in a competition for influence there with China's One Belt, One Road issue and all the money they're putting behind that in Pakistan and other areas in your AOR. What does the NDS change mean to your mission in AOR, and are you resourced to accomplish it?
Thanks, Senator. So, I think as we look at great power competition, we for example, we look at a resurgent power like Russia. Russia is not just, as we know, not just a European problem. It's a global problem. I mean, they have influence globally. So they're certainly acting out in the area of responsibility that I have. So I think the first thing that the national defense strategy and the national military strategy that is being modified to write that will recognize that aspect, that we have to be prepared to address these threats, not just in the areas in which they reside, but the areas in which they have influence. And so under General Dunford's leadership, we have developed, between all of the combatant commanders, I think very good plans and processes for how we will do that. I think more specifically what it means for us in the region here, particularly as we look to potentially shift to other areas of the globe in accordance with the National Defense Strategy's priorities. What it means for us is that we'll put a premium on the by, with, and through approach, and having strong relationships with the people we've always had relationships with, but also fostering new relationships.
But this, excuse me, General, but this does not send a message to the Taliban that we're not open for business in Afghanistan, does it?
Absolutely not.
Thank you.
Absolutely not. We remain very dedicated on this. So, we are focused on sustaining these relationships, on working with our partners, on becoming more interdependent with them, on becoming more mutually supporting with them among ourselves. And so that's what it means for me. I'm looking forward here in a couple weeks to meeting with a number of the chiefs of defense across the region to talk specifically about what the National Defense Strategy means and how we are going to approach it in the Centcom region.
General Waldhauser, I know you've talked in the committee hearing already about China's effort in Africa, but I would like for you to address the NDS shift and what that means in your AOR specifically.
Senator, I think one of the things that the NDS shift has done is it's put a spotlight on China's activities on the continent, which has been ongoing for quite some time. But now with this strategy and with this notoriety, I think it gives an opportunity for us to actually have a discussion and bring to awareness what actually the Chinese are doing and how that impacts us. But interestingly, on our future there, we're specifically told in the NDS to continue the by, with, and through approach. We're specifically told to work with partners and build capacity and continue the fight against counterterrorism forces. So in essence, the strategy frames the overall global posture. It frames for us prioritization, but it also tells us to essentially continue to build capacity on the continent so the Africans can take care of problems themselves and continue to degrade and disrupt the VEO fight so that those problems either stay localized and don't get out of the region or certainly to Europe or to our continent.
Thank you, sir. Thank you both. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For both of you, I believe some of my colleagues have already asked you about basically what I see as a hollowing out of the State Department at a time when we need to maintain that capacity. So I just wanted to ask you, would you acknowledge that a proposed 25% cut in the State Department and a 12.5% cut to USAID funding from fiscal year 2017 from fiscal year 2017 would not be helpful to your mission, either one of your missions?
Senator, as I mentioned in my opening comments, we look at this as a team sport, so we are very dependent upon our intergovernmental partners, and so continuing the support for their activities is, I think, essential to the things that we do.
Well, I would think that a 25% cut to the State Department would make it a lot harder for you to work with your partners. I think that goes without saying, and I realize you have to be very tactful in your responses. Let me get to some other questions. General Votel, the President's South Asia strategy was announced nearly 7 months ago, and General Nicholson stated in November that new permissions granted within the strategy for Afghanistan means that the campaign is on the, quote, path to win. Yet the Department of Defense Inspector General estimates that the Afghan government is in control of only 18% of the districts in the country, and we are now in the 17th year of conflict in Afghanistan. And the Director of National Intelligence stated that conditions this year are likely to deteriorate. So, in your view, what exactly does winning mean in Afghanistan at this point? And can the addition of troops, even the much heralded Security Force Assistance Brigade, really make enough of a difference to reach the level of winning?
Senator, I think we are on the right approach, and I'm aware of what you're citing there, but I'd also highlight that the government of Afghanistan also controls 64% of the population, has control and is able to protect 64% of the population. So our strategy is really this year using the additional authorities, the additional resources that we have moved within Centcom and those that are coming from the department to ensure that we are in a position to break the stalemate, to seize the initiative, to expand that population control, and to ensure that we have, in this year, provided the right security environment to support the upcoming parliamentary election. So I do think we are on the right track with this.
That remains to be seen because a number of years ago when I went to Afghanistan, we were training the Afghan troops to be able to support their own military efforts and defense. That was many years ago, and at that time we were told that we were on the right track, and here we are 17 years later. So it remains to be seen. I want to get to what's going on in Yemen. So the United Nations has called Yemen the worst humanitarian crisis in the world, and the United States continues to support the Saudi-led coalition, but the situation on the ground continues to be a stalemate. Your testimony mentions both the challenge of this crisis and the threat of Iran's proxy war in Yemen growing into a regional crisis. Do you see a realistic path to hostilities in Yemen concluding? How long do you expect the hostilities to go on? And are there ways to deal with the humanitarian crisis immediately before a full cessation of hostilities?
Well, Senator, to answer your question directly, I think there are our diplomats and there are other international parties under the UN that are trying to pursue the diplomatic solution to this and get to some kind of peace process. That's been difficult to do at this particular point. I guess what I would highlight first off is that what is happening in Yemen is there certainly is a humanitarian disaster taking place, but there's also a security disaster taking place, and there is a political disaster taking place. And the people that are responsible for this are the Houthis. And they are the central nexus to all of this, enabled by Iran. They are refusing to cooperate in the political process. They are impeding humanitarian efforts that are being undertaken by Saudi Arabia and others here, and they are perpetuating the military situation with their support from Iran, which threatens to widen the conflict. So I think it's important to recognize that at the heart of these problems, humanitarian, security, and political, are the Houthis, enabled by the Iran. I would also say
I agree with you. I acknowledge that. What is the opportunity for any kind of U.S. leadership, because we are enabling the Saudis to continue their battle there?
Well, we're not parties to this conflict. But what we can do is we can help them, we can advise them, we can share our lessons learned on how to more effectively apply their capabilities, how more effectively to apply their partnerships that they have in conjunction with this. I would also add, Senator, that during my last visit to Saudi Arabia, one of the things I had an opportunity to do was to talk with them about how they are helping with the humanitarian aid or the humanitarian disaster situation. And what I would share with you is what I learned is that they have a much more aggressive program in this area than even I realized. They are not only going into the port of Hodeidah, they are exploiting other ports. They are bringing aid into airports in the central part of the country, and they are using their own ground routes across the border to do this. In many ways, they are pushing a lot of effort in this. It's not perfect. The situation is extraordinarily challenging here, but they recognize this, and I do believe they are trying to take efforts to support this wherever they can with their coalition partners.
Yeah, I still don't know what the U.S. role there should be and is, because we are very much a part of what the Saudis are doing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Gillibrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Votel, I'm deeply troubled by an incident that happened in Afghanistan on June 9th, 2014, in which 5 American troops and an Afghan soldier were killed by our own aircraft. This friendly fire incident was explored in a 60-minute segment last November that highlighted deeply concerning elements about the event, including the assignment of a JTAC who had been demoted and kicked out of an Air Force Special Operations Unit for poor performance, and then assigned to these Green Berets, and the lack of understanding by the B-1 crew and the unit on the ground about what the crew could see. Are you familiar with this incident? And if so, what can you tell me about how something like this can actually happen?
Senator, I am familiar with the incident, although I will tell you I don't recall all the specific details of it right here today. What I can tell you is that in all of these instances, and I know this from my own experience, that we do exhaustive reviews and exhaustive investigations to determine the cause of what happens. If people are to be held accountable, they are held accountable, and then we make efforts to try to apply the lessons learned out of this to limit this. The unfortunate aspect of this business is that our people are operating oftentimes in confusing situations, making decisions in very dynamic environments, and unfortunately things like this do occur. And so our goal has been to minimize that by ensuring that we have the right people, they have the right training, and we have the right capabilities.
Do you think that B-1s are appropriate airframes for close air support?
I think the B-1s have been very effective in that role as they played it in Afghanistan and other places.
Do they have the technology available to be able to see the strobe lights that are placed on the helmets of our troops?
I believe they do.
Were any changes made as a result of this incident?
Senator, I would take that question for the record, and we'll go back and look, and I'll provide you a more thorough response to all the actions that we did take as a result of this.
Specifically to infrared strobes. I've asked the Pentagon for the investigation of this incident and have not yet received it. Can I please have your commitment that you will help me get this information?
You have my commitment, Senator.
Thank you. In early February, Israel intercepted an Iranian drone in its airspace, resulting in an Israeli military response striking what it described as the command center from which Iran had launched the drone. An Israeli F-16 fighter jet involved in the offensive was downed by Syrian anti-aircraft fire, which prompted the Israeli military to respond against 8 Syrian targets, including 3 aerial defense batteries and 4 Iranian positions that it described as part of Iran's military entrenchment in Syria. What's your assessment of Iran's actions in Syria, and is it entrenching itself in the country?
Senator, I'm extraordinarily concerned about Iran's role. I think they are trying to perpetuate their influence, and certainly they are trying to create a axis so that they can continue to support Lebanese Hezbollah and use that relationship to threaten Iran or threaten Israel. So I am extraordinarily concerned about that.
And do you feel that this incident reflected a change in the Iranian rules of engagement in Syria?
I can't speak for what the Iranian rules of engagement are. Certainly, it was brazen and foolhardy for them to do this, given the capabilities that Israel has.
General Waldhauser, I took a Codell with a number of senators to Africa a few years ago to assess where we were with regard to the growth of terrorism, because as you know, the precursors to 9/11 came out of Africa, whether it was the bombing of the embassy in Kenya or other terrorist attacks. I'm very concerned about what's happening in Africa, not only your previous answers today, but even the front page of the New York Times yesterday, a story that more than 650,000 children under the age of 5 are severely malnourished in northern Kenya, Somalia, and Ethiopia. And that famine throughout Africa is causing 12 million people to rely on food aid. You combine that with the effects of global climate change, specifically on the ability of the many countries within Africa to grow their own food and provide for food. It's creating crime. It's creating more terrorism. And you add to that what's happening with the Boko Haram efforts to steal children, to have trafficking of females, and to destroy whole communities. I'm really concerned about the direction of terrorism and its growth throughout Africa. Can you give me guidance on how these changes are impacting our mission and our posture in the areas of your operation?
Senator, some of the numbers that you stated are certainly overwhelming. And when it comes to the African continent, unfortunately, those numbers are sometimes the order of the day. Last year, for example, inside Somalia, there were over 6 million people who were food insecure. This year, it's going to be around 5 million people, and that's just in that region. I would say from the climate perspective is that we have seen the Sahel, the grasslands of the Sahel, recede and become desert almost a mile per year in the last decade or so. This has a significant impact on the herders who have to fight, if you will, for grassland and water holes and the like. So these environmental challenges put pressure on these different organizations. Some are VEO, some are criminal, but it puts pressure on these organizations just for their own livelihood. So consequently, in areas like northern Mali, ISIS West Africa, in the northern part of Niger, these are areas that are very concerned to us. And this is why we're trying to work so closely with those countries there so that they can maintain security, that they can keep, at a minimum, keep these challenges inside those particular boundaries. But there are some significant challenges, and the numbers sometimes in Africa can overwhelm you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We don't have any more members, and hopefully we won't have any more members. But let me just, for clarification, first of all, I didn't want to be discourteous in that one interruption that I had during the course, but I think it's important because this is something that can be changed. I think what Senator Rounds is getting to is that we're all aware that prior to 10 years ago, the continent of Africa was divided into 3 different commands, PACOM, EUCOM, and Centcom. It completely surrounds Africa. Now, when we had decided to have Africom, still, under its construction, we had both allocated and assigned troops in PACOM, allocated assigned troops in EUCOM, allocated assigned troops in Centcom, but only allocated troops in Africom. Now, that's the difference, and I still think that should be open to discussion because we've seen a lot of things. LRA, for example, when we had problems, we had to bring in troops from other places. And so it's my intention to try to draw, and I'm sure it is Senator Rounds' attention to put that in the focus to see if we have the right blend there or if, in fact, we should have assigned troops in Africom. Now, do you have any comment to make on that?
No, Senator, I think to a large degree we're saying the same thing. I mean, the technicality of assigned and allocated to those who don't do this on a daily basis may not seem like a big deal, but allocated is something that you might be able to count on all the time, but you may not be. Assigned forces, obviously, you can
exactly
count on.
And I'm sure that's what he is getting to. So
right.
I think we're in total agreement on that. Any other thoughts?
No.
Okay, we are adjourned.
Thanks.